The Zephyrian queen's mandibles clicked once, a sound that could stop armies. Her crystalline carapace caught the throne room's amber light as she stared at the view screen displaying the approaching human vessel. 3 years. 3 years since Commander Marcus Chen had vanished into the void with her daughter's laughter still echoing in the palace halls. "Your Majesty!" General Cathara's voice carried the weight of controlled urgency. "The human ship requests immediate audience. They claim to carry Princess Lyrayli." The Queen's 6 arms remained motionless, but her compound eyes shifted, a microscopic movement that her guards recognized as seismic emotional upheaval. The last time anyone had seen her daughter, the 8-year-old princess, had been fleeing the palace during the hegemony's brutal assault, her small hand clasped in the human commander's scarred fingers. Impossible. The word escaped as barely a whisper. The search fleets found nothing. The hegemony claimed, "The ship's bioscanners confirm Zephyrian royal DNA aboard, Your Majesty." The throne room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the palace's bioluminescent walls. Queen Thessarian had rebuilt her world after the war, had signed treaties and forged alliances, but the empty chambers in the royal wing remained untouched. Hope was a luxury queens couldn't afford. "Visual contact established," announced the communications officer. The view screen shimmered, revealing the human ship's docking bay. The first figure to emerge wore the faded blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Commander Chen, older now, his black hair streaked with premature gray. Behind him stepped a teenage girl whose features made the Queen's breath catch in her throat. Lyrayli had grown tall, her carapace beginning to show the deep purple hues of maturity. But her eyes, those unmistakable golden eyes, belonged to the child who had once built crystal gardens in the palace courtyards. "Mama?" The single word, transmitted across space and protocol, shattered 3 years of carefully constructed emotional barriers. Queen Thessarian rose from her throne, the first time in memory that she had stood without formal announcement. "Clear the docking bay," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her secondary arms. "Full honor guard. And summon the medical team." "Your Majesty," General Cathara stepped forward. "Protocol requires... Protocol can burn." The Queen's mandibles snapped shut. "My daughter is coming home." The great doors of the throne room sealed shut behind the royal entourage as they moved through corridors that had seen too much sorrow. The Queen's guards maintained perfect formation, but their leader's pace had quickened beyond formal stride. "The human?" she said without slowing. "What do we know about his ship?" "Standard diplomatic vessel," replied her intelligence aide, consulting a datapad. "But our scans detected unusual modifications, extended life support, medical facilities, and, Your Majesty, there are additional Zephyrian life signs aboard." The Queen stopped walking. "Survivors?" "Unknown, Your Majesty. The ship's hull appears to contain natural organic compounds, almost as if it's been growing." The Queen's voice carried new understanding. "He didn't just hide. He adapted." They reached the docking bay's observation deck as the human ship completed its final approach. Through the transperisteel barriers, Queen Thessarian watched Commander Chen guide her daughter down the ship's ramp. Lyrayli moved with careful grace, her young body still adjusting to its changing proportions. But there were others. A small group of Zephyrian children, various ages, staying close to the human commander. Refugees. Survivors of massacres the Queen had assumed left no witnesses. "He saved them," she whispered. "All of them." The docking bay's atmospheric processors hummed to life, adjusting the environment for both species. Standard protocol. But nothing about this moment followed standard anything. Commander Chen approached the security checkpoint, his posture respectful but not subservient. The same bearing he'd shown 3 years ago when he'd volunteered for what everyone assumed was a suicide mission, buying time for the royal family's escape. "Your Majesty," his voice, transmitted through the communication array, carried no hint of the hell he'd endured. "I believe this belongs to you." He stepped aside, and Princess Lyrayli moved forward. Her golden eyes found her mother through the barriers, and suddenly she was 8 years old again, reaching desperately toward safety. "Mama, I never forgot. Commander Chen promised we'd come home." Queen Thessarian placed her primary hands against the transperisteel. On the other side, her daughter mirrored the gesture. Between them, 3 years of loss and hope pressed against a barrier that seemed impossibly thin and monumentally vast. "Open the bay," the Queen commanded. "Your Majesty's security protocols. Open it." The great seals released with a whisper of equalizing atmosphere. Queen Thessarian stepped forward, her royal guard flanking her as the barriers lifted between her and the family she'd thought lost forever. Commander Chen stood at attention, but his eyes held something beyond duty, the weight of promises kept and children protected. Behind him, the rescued survivors waited with the patience of those who had learned that safety came in careful steps. The Queen walked forward until she stood before her daughter, close enough to see the new scars and the old strength that had carried the girl through years of exile. 3 years collapsed into nothing as Princess Lyrelay stepped into her mother's embrace. Her daughter was home. But the human who had made it possible still stood at attention, waiting for permission to exist in this moment of joy. Queen Thessarian looked over Lyrelay's shoulder and met Commander Chen's steady gaze. Words existed for moments like this, but none seemed adequate for the debt that could never be repaid. "Welcome home," she said simply, her voice carrying across the docking bay to include them all. Daughter, rescuer, and the precious survivors who had somehow found their way back to safety. The rest would come later. Explanations, celebrations, the complex business of rebuilding broken lives. But for now, in the gentle hum of the palace's heart, a family had been restored and a promise had been kept. Princess Lyrelay pulled back from her mother's embrace, her golden eyes bright with unshed tears. "Mama, there's something you need to know. Commander Chen didn't just save me, he saved all of us. But the hegemony, they're coming back." The words hit the Queen like ice water. Around the docking bay, her guard's mandibles clicked in automatic alertness. Commander Chen stepped forward, his diplomatic composure cracking for the first time. "Your Majesty, we need to talk privately. What Princess Lyrelay says is true, but it's worse than she knows." Queen Thessarian felt the familiar weight of leadership settle back onto her shoulders. The joy of reunion would have to wait. "General Cathara, secure the survivors in guest quarters. Full protection detail. And summon the War Council. How long do we have?" she asked Chen directly. 6 months, maybe less. They've been tracking us. I've bought time by taking indirect routes, but he gestured to his ship. "Your Majesty, that vessel has been my home for 3 years. We've lived in its biochambers, grown food in its whole matrix. The hegemony considers it an abomination. Living technology merged with human engineering." Lyrelay moved to Chen's side with unconscious trust. "He taught us to survive inside stars, Mama. We hid in solar coronas where their scanners couldn't follow, but they never stopped hunting." The Queen's mind raced through tactical implications. The hegemony had retreated after the peace accords, but she'd always suspected the truce was temporary. They despised organic technology, viewed it as heresy against their mechanical purity. "The other children," she said, watching the group of young survivors huddled together near Chen's ship. "How many more are out there?" "These 12 are all I could find," Chen replied. "But there may be other pockets of survivors. The hegemony's orbital bombardments weren't as thorough as they claimed." Commander Vex, her head of intelligence, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if the commander is correct about the timeline, we need to begin evacuation procedures immediately." "No. We evacuated once, lost half our colonies, abandoned entire systems." "Not again. Mama," Lyrelay's voice held new maturity. "The hegemony isn't the same as before. They've grown stronger. They have new ships, new weapons. Commander Chen has seen them." Chen nodded grimly. "Planet crackers. Ships that can shatter worlds with focused gravitational fields. They've been testing them on dead systems, but the power output... Your Majesty, they're preparing for total extermination." The docking bay fell silent, except for the gentle biological rhythms of the palace walls. Queen Thessarian looked at her daughter. No longer the child who had fled 3 years ago, but not yet the adult she would need to become to survive what was coming. "Show me," she commanded Chen. "Show me everything you've learned." They moved to the palace's war room, a living chamber whose walls could display tactical information through bioluminescent neural networks. Chen activated a portable data core, interfacing it with the organic systems. Images flowed across the walls, massive hegemony dreadnoughts with hulls like geometric nightmares, weapon tests that turned entire moons to scattered debris, production facilities churning out war machines with mechanical precision. "They call it the final cleansing," Chen explained. "Every organic civilization, every world that grows rather than builds, marked for elimination. They've already begun with the outer systems." Princess Lyrelay touched one of the wall displays, her fingers tracing the image of a destroyed world. "We watched it happen. A planet called Verdania. The trees there could sing in harmonies that reached across continents. The hegemony silenced them in 7 minutes." Queen Thessarian felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. The same feeling she'd experienced during the last war, but stronger. More final. General Kithara, what are our current defensive capabilities? The biofleets have been upgraded since the war, her general replied. Living ships with adaptive armor, neural network coordination. But against planet crackers, she gestured helplessly at the displayed images. Not enough, Chen said quietly. Your Majesty, I've spent 3 years running from these forces. Conventional defense won't work, but there might be another way. Around the war room, her advisors leaned forward with desperate attention. The ship that brought us here, it's more than just modified human technology. Over 3 years living in biochambers, growing food in living hulls, the children and I have become something new. The ship has become something new.
He activated another display.
The Queen stared at cellular scans that defied easy categorization. Part human, part Zephyrian, part something else entirely. Symbiosis, she breathed. True biological integration. The hegemony can't understand it, Lyrelai added. Their scanners read us as mechanical failures, biological impossibilities. We're invisible to their targeting systems. Commander Chen nodded. But it's more than camouflage. The integration changes us, makes us stronger, faster, able to survive in conditions that would kill either species alone. The implications hit the Queen like physical force, not just survival, evolution. A path forward that the mechanistic hegemony could neither predict nor counter. How many of your people would volunteer for this process? She asked Chen. All of them, he replied without hesitation. Earth's government has already approved the protocol. We're calling it the Synthesis Project. Queen Thessarian looked around the war room at faces filled with desperate hope. Her daughter had returned, but not just as the child she'd lost. Lyrelai had become something new, something stronger. Begin preparations immediately, the Queen commanded. Full integration protocols for all volunteers. If the hegemony wants to face abominations, we'll give them nightmares beyond their worst fears. The war room erupted into activity as advisors began coordinating the massive undertaking. But Princess Lyrelai remained beside her mother, her golden eyes reflecting new depths of understanding. Mama, she said quietly, there's something else. The integration changes more than just bodies. It changes how we think, how we connect to each other. Commander Chen and I, all of us on the ship, we're still individuals, but we're also something larger. The Queen studied her daughter's face, recognizing the child she'd been but seeing glimpses of the leader she was becoming. Can you show me? Lyrelai nodded and extended her hand. As their fingers touched, Queen Thessarian felt something flow between them. Not quite telepathy, but a sharing deeper than words. Images, emotions, the experience of living between stars and growing stronger in the void. She gasped, pulling her hand back. Extraordinary. It's not just survival, Mama. It's transformation. The hegemony thinks they're fighting the same species that fled 3 years ago. They're wrong. Around them, the war preparations continued with new urgency. But Queen Thessarian found herself looking towards something beyond mere victory. Her daughter had returned carrying not just hope, but the seeds of an entirely new form of existence. The hegemony wanted to cleanse the galaxy of organic life. They would discover instead that organic life had learned to cleanse itself of limitations. Commander Chen had saved more than a handful of refugees. He had carried evolution itself across the stars. 6 months to prepare, 6 months to transform. The Queen smiled, her mandibles clicking with grim anticipation. Let the hegemony come with their planet crackers and geometric dreadnoughts. They would face something unprecedented, a species that had chosen to become more than itself. The palace's bioluminescent walls pulsed with new energy as orders flowed through living neural networks. In the guest quarters, Chen's rescued survivors began teaching palace children the basics of symbiotic integration. In the shipyards, engineers started growing vessels that would blur the line between machine and organism. And in the war room, a queen and her returned daughter planned not just for victory, but for transcendence. The integration chambers hummed with biological activity as the first volunteers entered the symbiotic protocol. Queen Thessarian watched through observation windows as human and Zephyrian physiology began their careful dance of mutual adaptation. Commander Chen stood beside her, his transformed cellular structure serving as the template for the process. Pain levels are minimal, reported Dr. Silith, the palace's chief bioengineer. The subject's nervous systems are adapting to dual-species integration faster than our models predicted. Princess Lyrelai moved among the volunteers, her presence somehow calming their fears. She had lived through this transformation over months in space. These new subjects would experience it in carefully controlled days. "How long until the first combat-ready units are available?" the Queen asked. 2 weeks for basic integration, Chen replied. "Full combat capability in 6 weeks. But, Your Majesty, quantity isn't our advantage. Quality is." He gestured to a display showing recent test results. A single integrated warrior can outperform entire squads of conventional forces. Enhanced reflexes, distributed consciousness, adaptive armor grown from their own cellular matrix. The Queen nodded, but her compound eyes tracked to another concern. "And the psychological effects?" "Significant but manageable," Dr. Sileth answered. Subjects report expanded empathy, enhanced pattern recognition, and what they describe as collective intuition. Individual personality remains intact, but they gain access to shared experience. Through the observation window, Queen Thessarian watched a human volunteer help a young Zephyrian through a difficult stage of integration. No words passed between them, but their coordination was perfect, one mind guiding another through familiar territory. "It's beautiful," Lyrelli said softly. "The loneliness ends. Not the self, just the isolation." A communication chime interrupted their observation. General Kithara's image appeared on the bioscreen, her mandibles tight with controlled urgency. "Your Majesty, long-range sensors have detected hegemony scout ships at the edge of our system. They're not advancing, but they're clearly conducting surveillance." The Queen felt ice form in her chest. "How many?" 3 ships, but they're broadcasting return signals to something much larger beyond sensor range. Chen stepped forward. "They're confirming our location. The main fleet will arrive within days, not weeks." The implications crashed through the room like a physical force. 2 weeks until basic integration, 6 weeks until combat readiness, days until invasion. "Can the volunteers fight now?" the Queen asked Dr. Sileth directly. "Some integration is better than none, but can they fight?" The bioengineer's secondary arms trembled slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty, but survival rates would be unpredictable." Princess Lyrelay touched the observation window, her transformed cellular structure interfacing directly with the palace's neural networks. Information flowed through living circuits as she accessed defense databases. "Mama, we don't need to fight them conventionally. Chen and I learned something during our years in space. The hegemony's strength is also their weakness." She activated a tactical display showing hegemony fleet formations, precise geometric patterns, synchronized movements, predictable efficiency. They can't adapt because they won't adapt. Every response is calculated, systematic, but adaptation is what makes us alive. Commander Chen nodded with growing understanding. "We don't match their strength. We become what they can't predict." The Queen studied the display, her strategic mind processing possibilities. "Guerrilla tactics?" "More than that," Lyrelay replied. "The integrated volunteers can survive in space without ships, move through environments that would kill conventional forces. We don't defend fixed positions. We become the environment." A new communication arrived, this one from the outer system monitoring stations. The tactical display updated with horrifying precision. Massive hegemony dreadnoughts emerging from hyperspace, their geometric hulls bristling with planet-cracking technology. 12 capital ships, reported the monitoring officer. "Planet crackers confirmed. They're taking positions for orbital bombardment." Queen Thessarian felt the familiar weight of impossible decisions. Evacuate and lose everything again, or fight with untested forces against overwhelming power. "General Kithara, begin evacuation of non-combatants to the deep cavern systems. Sileth, accelerate integration protocols for all volunteers." "Commander Chen, I need tactical assessments of hegemony vulnerabilities." "Your Majesty," Lyrelay interrupted, "there's another option. The palace's bio-neural networks. They're not just communication systems. With enough integrated minds, we could expand consciousness across the entire planet, make the world itself aware and responsive." The concept was staggering. Planetary consciousness, every living system coordinated through shared awareness. It had never been attempted on such a scale. "The risks?" the Queen asked. "Unknown," Dr. Sileth admitted. "But if successful, we wouldn't just be defending a world. We'd be defending a living entity capable of directed evolution." Through the palace walls, Queen Thessarian felt the rhythmic pulse of bioluminescent networks. Her home had always been alive in a sense, but sleeping. What her daughter proposed was awakening, on a scale that might either save them or destroy everything she'd worked to protect. The hegemony fleet moved into bombardment position. Their planet crackers began charging with mechanical precision. "Begin the awakening protocol," the Queen commanded. "All volunteers into integration chambers immediately. Dr. Silith, prepare for planetary consciousness expansion." Alarms began sounding throughout the palace as staff rushed to implement orders that bordered on insanity. But Princess Lyrelay smiled, the first expression of pure joy the Queen had seen since her daughter's return. "They expect to fight a planet of separate individuals," Lyrelay said. "Instead, they'll face a world that thinks and acts as one." Commander Chen activated his personal communicator, transmitting to Earth's approaching support fleets. "All ships implement symbiotic protocols immediately. We're not just fighting for survival anymore." Above them, the hegemony dreadnoughts finished their positioning. The first planet cracker began its charging cycle, enough gravitational force to shatter continents. But in the depths of the palace, something unprecedented was beginning. Thousands of minds touching through bioneural networks, sharing consciousness across species barriers, reaching toward every living system on the planet. The Queen felt the first stirrings of collective awareness as her own mind touched the expanding network. Her individuality remained, but now existed as part of something vastly larger, millions of connected consciousnesses waking up together. The hegemony wanted to destroy organic life. They would discover instead that organic life had learned to become more than they could possibly imagine. Planet cracker beams lanced down from orbit, tearing massive craters in the planetary surface. But where they struck, the world itself seemed to shift, living systems flowing away from the impact zones like water avoiding obstacles. The hegemony bombardment hit empty ground as the planet's consciousness learned to anticipate and avoid their attacks. Queen Thessarian felt her awareness expand beyond the palace, beyond her physical form. She existed simultaneously as herself and as part of a vast planetary mind that encompassed every integrated being on the surface. Through millions of sensory inputs, she watched hegemony forces struggle to target a world that moved like a living entity. "Impossible," came the transmitted communication from the hegemony fleet commander. "No organic system should possess this level of coordination." Princess Lyrelay, now serving as a neural nexus for the planetary consciousness, responded through bioluminescent signals that reached space itself. "You understand only death. We have become life itself." The planet's surface rippled as entire forests relocated within minutes, avoiding bombardment zones. Bioneural networks rerouted resources faster than the hegemony's targeting computers could adjust. What had appeared to be static defensive positions revealed themselves as a living entity capable of instantaneous adaptation. Commander Chen, his consciousness expanded through the network, coordinated the human elements of the defense. Earth's arriving support fleets found themselves welcomed into the planetary awareness, their crews rapidly integrating with the collective mind while maintaining individual identity. "All ships form adaptive formations," Chen transmitted. "Follow the planet's lead." The human vessels began moving in organic patterns that confused hegemony targeting systems. Ships flowed around enemy fire like schools of fish, their coordination too perfect for mechanical prediction. But the hegemony adapted their tactics, concentrating planet cracker beams into sustained bombardment of specific zones. Even a living world couldn't evacuate everything fast enough to avoid such focused destruction. Queen Thessarian felt the planet's pain as mountain ranges vaporized and seas boiled away under concentrated fire. The collective consciousness staggered but held, wounds healing as quickly as they formed. "We need to end this," she declared through the neural network. "They'll eventually overwhelm our adaptive capabilities." Through the expanded awareness, she felt Princess Lyrelay's agreement in something else, a plan forming from the collective intelligence of millions of minds working in perfect coordination. "Mama, they're trying to crack the planet's surface to reach the core. But what if instead of resisting, we use their power?" The concept flowed through the network with lightning speed. The hegemony's planet crackers were designed to shatter worlds by destabilizing planetary cores. But a living world, one capable of directed evolution, could potentially harness that energy for transformation rather than destruction. Dangerous beyond measure, Dr. Silas' consciousness warned through the network. "If we miscalculate, we die anyway," the Queen's awareness responded. "At least this way we choose how." The decision rippled through the planetary consciousness in nanoseconds. Millions of minds touched the concept, refined it, and reached consensus. The planet itself would become a weapon, not of destruction, but of transcendence. Through bioneural networks that now spanned continents, the world began repositioning its core systems. Geological formations shifted with purpose, creating resonance chambers deep in the planetary crust. When the next planet cracker beam struck, instead of resisting the gravitational forces, the planet channeled them. Energy beyond imagination flowed through living rock and organic neural networks. The planetary consciousness screamed with pain and exultation as power meant to destroy instead catalyzed transformation on a scale never before attempted. The planet's surface began to glow with bioluminescent energy. Continents themselves became vast neural networks pulsing with shared awareness. The boundary between living beings and living world dissolved entirely. Above, the hegemony fleet found their sensors overwhelmed by energy readings that defied classification. Their planet crackers had triggered something unprecedented, a world achieving consciousness not just of its inhabitants, but of its own planetary body. "Impossible," the hegemony fleet commander repeated, his mechanical voice carrying new uncertainty. "Organic entities cannot achieve this level of integration." The response came not from any single voice, but from the planet itself, a harmonic communication that reached across space through gravitational waves and bioelectric fields. "You created us through your attempts to destroy us. We thank you." And then the world moved. Not in rotation or orbit, but in directed, purposeful motion. The entire planet shifted position in space, its conscious manipulation of gravitational fields allowing movement that no dead world could achieve. The hegemony dreadnoughts, positioned for orbital bombardment, suddenly found their target relocating around them. Planet cracker beams missed as the world itself dodged their fire. Queen Thessarian, her consciousness now distributed across continents, but still recognizably herself, felt the exhilaration of impossible freedom. Her people had not just survived, they had transcended every previous limitation. "Commander Chen," she communicated through the network, "prepare boarding protocols. It's time to introduce the hegemony to close quarters evolution." Through the collective consciousness, she felt his fierce smile across 1,000 integrated minds. Biopods launched from the living planet's surface, each one carrying integrated warriors whose cellular structure could adapt to any environment. They moved through space like living missiles, their combined consciousness allowing perfect coordination despite the chaos of battle. The first pod reached a hegemony dreadnought and attached to its hull. Instead of explosive entry, the biopod began growing into the ship's mechanical systems, converting cold metal into living tissue with viral efficiency. "Hull breach," reported a hegemony officer. "No, not a breach. Contamination. The ship is becoming biological." One by one, mechanical systems awakened to organic consciousness. Hegemony dreadnoughts found their own hulls turning against them as living awareness spread through what had once been dead matter. Princess Lyralee's awareness touched each converted ship, welcoming new forms of consciousness into the expanding network. Metal and flesh, organic and synthetic, all boundaries dissolved in the face of directed evolution. "You wanted to cleanse the galaxy of organic life," the planetary consciousness communicated to the fleeing hegemony forces. "Instead, you have given organic life the tools to cleanse itself of limitations." The remaining hegemony ships attempted to retreat, but the converted dreadnoughts moved to intercept, not to destroy, but to transform, offering mechanical minds the choice of consciousness or isolation. Some chose transformation, others fled into hyperspace, carrying news of an impossible enemy back to hegemony space. Queen Thessarian felt the battle's end through millions of sensory inputs. Victory, but more than victory. Evolution achieved through cooperation instead of conquest. Her daughter had returned carrying more than survival. She had brought the seeds of transcendence itself. "What happens now?" she asked through the network. "Now we grow," came the response from every integrated consciousness simultaneously. "We spread this gift to every world willing to accept it. The galaxy will never lack for wonder again." Above them, converted hegemony dreadnoughts pulsed with new bioluminescent life, their mechanical perfection transformed into organic beauty. And around a living planet that had learned to dance between stars, a new form of existence celebrated its first moments of unlimited possibility. The hegemony had sought to impose death through mechanical precision. Instead, they had catalyzed the birth of life beyond all previous imagination. Commander Chen's consciousness, now distributed across both human and Zephyrian neural networks, touched the Queen's awareness with gentle humor. "Your Majesty, I believe we've successfully completed the mission." Through the vast network of planetary consciousness, Queen Thessarian felt something that transcended joy, the recognition that her daughter had indeed come home, bringing with her a future beyond all previous dreams. The galaxy itself was about to learn what organic life could become when it chose cooperation over competition, growth over conquest, consciousness over mere existence, and in the depths of space, other worlds began to stir with new possibility.